Forest Mysteries. The first light of dawn seeped cautiously through the tangled canopy, casting a muted gray glow over the damp undergrowth. A cold mist clung low to the forest floor, swirling around the roots and fallen leaves that formed a mottled carpet. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant call of a solitary bird, its cry muffled by the thick fog. Lucas moved with deliberate caution along the muddy trail, each step measured to avoid slipping on the slick earth. His battered backpack pressed uncomfortably against his shoulders, and his breath fogged in the cold, dissipating almost instantly into the crisp air. His mind was clouded with exhaustion, yet a persistent flicker of instinct refused to fade. It urged him forward, overriding the fatigue that threatened to drag him down. Every movement was slow and careful. His boots squished softly in the mud, leaving faint impressions that quickly blurred into the surrounding gloom. The forest around him was unervingly still, save for the gentle rustling of dried leaves stirred by a faint breeze. The oppressive silence pressed against his ears, amplifying every small sound. He paused briefly, scanning the surroundings with wary eyes. The weight of recent days bore down on him, but it was the strange sight on the ground that drew his attention. Fresh footprints pressed into the soft earth. They were unlike any he had seen before. Large, broad, and oddly symmetrical, they seemed deliberately placed. The toes pointed slightly outward, and the shape was too precise, too perfect to belong to any ordinary animal. His fingers hesitated before brushing aside a stray leaf, revealing more of the mysterious trail. A prickling sense of unease crept over him, yet curiosity pushed him to investigate further. The footprints veered off the beaten path into denser thickets, leading deeper into the forest. He knelt, narrowing his eyes as he examined the impressions. The edges were sharp, the depths pronounced, almost as if they had been carved into the soil rather than pressed. There were no signs of disturbance nearby. No broken twigs, no displaced foliage. Just these strange, symmetrical marks embedded in the mud. Suddenly, a faint shuffling sound froze him in place. The forest remained silent again, as if holding its breath. His ears strained, catching the faintest whisper of movement, something that didn't belong to the wind. His muscles tensed instinctively, every nerve alert. For a moment, he thought he glimpsed a flicker of motion among the trees. Just a shadow, perhaps an illusion born of fatigue and the early morning haze. But then the quiet settled once more, deep and unbroken. He rose slowly, shoulders tense, and took a cautious step toward the trail. The temperature seemed to drop slightly, and his senses sharpened. A distant, mournful howl echoed through the woods, curling around the trunks and dissolving into the silence. The sound was unlike any wolf or dog he knew, more primal, more haunting. It sent a shiver down his spine, stirring memories of stories he'd heard long ago about creatures lurking just beyond the edge of understanding. His eyes flicked toward the direction of the cry. Doubt crept in. Was it a warning, or merely an animal seeking its morning meal? Yet the tone and cadence of that distant call felt different, heavier. It carried an unexplainable weight, as if the forest itself responded to something unseen. A sudden gust of wind stirred the leaves at his feet, carrying with it a faint, earthy scent, wild and primal, yet strangely familiar. He inhaled sharply, trying to identify it, but the aroma was fleeting, slipping away like smoke. His grip tightened on the strap of his backpack, grounding himself amid the uncertainty. The forest pressed in closer, the canopy filtering the weak sunlight into shifting patches of shadow and light. Without warning, the ground beneath him softened into a marshy patch. The mud grew slicker, and his boots sank slightly, prompting him to pause. The forest seemed to hold its breath again, waiting. A quick movement caught his eye, a shadow darting between the trees, elusive and swift. His heartbeat quickened, but he kept his face composed, suppressing the instinct to chase after it. Experience told him shadows often hid danger, yet this felt different, more purposeful, more threatening. He scanned the surroundings carefully, searching for clues, anything that might explain the strange signs or the sense of being watched. The silence grew oppressive, broken only by the distant echo of that haunting howl. His skin prickled as he took another cautious step forward, eyes fixed on the trail ahead. The footprints extended into a thicker section of the woods, where darkness seemed to deepen and the air grew colder. Then, out of nowhere, a faint whisper brushed past his ear, almost like a breath or a sigh. He spun around instinctively, heart pounding anew, but found only the empty, mist-shrouded woods. For a moment, he questioned his senses. Perhaps fatigue was distorting his perception. Yet, the feeling persisted, something unseen, lurking just beyond his sight, waiting. A shiver ran down his spine as he stared into the shadows, fingers tightening on the strap of his pack. The distant howl rose again, clearer and more urgent. It was no ordinary animal's cry. It sounded primal, almost human in its mournfulness. The call seemed to beckon him, warning or inviting him to follow. Whatever its intent, it pulled him deeper into the forest's embrace. He hesitated, then exhaled slowly, forcing himself to move forward. The footprints beckoned him into the shadows, where darkness stretched and swayed as if alive. His hand instinctively reached for the strap of his backpack, gripping it tightly, an anchor amid the uncertainty. The canopy above filtered the weak sunlight into shifting patches of gray and black, cloaking the path ahead. A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, stirring the leaves and carrying a faint, earthy aroma, something wild, primal, and oddly compelling. He inhaled sharply again, trying to identify the scent, but it dissolved almost immediately. Driven by a mixture of caution and resolve, he pressed on. Every step grew heavier, yet he couldn't turn back. Not after seeing the strange footprints, not after hearing that distant cry. The ground beneath him softened further, turning into a muddy mire that slowed his progress. The forest seemed to hold its breath, awaiting what might come next. A flicker of movement again, this time a shadow slipping between the trees, quick and elusive. His pulse quickened, but he kept his expression neutral, suppressing the instinct to pursue. His experience warned him not to chase every shadow, but something about this felt significant, like a sign. He paused, scanning for clues, any sign that might explain what was happening. The silence pressed down on him, broken only by the distant, mournful howl. His eyes darted ahead, following the trail into a denser thicket where darkness thickened and the cold seeped deeper. The footprints continued into that gloom, leading him further into the unknown. Then, suddenly, a faint sound, something like a whisper or a breath, drifted from behind him. He spun around swiftly, heart pounding, but saw only the misty woods stretching endlessly. For a moment, He wondered if fatigue was clouding his judgment, if his senses were playing tricks. Yet the unease persisted, a presence unseen, watching, waiting. A chill ran through him as he gazed into the shadows, fingers tightening on his pack strap. The distant cry sounded again, clearer and more insistent. It was a call, perhaps a warning, perhaps an invitation. Whatever it was, it pulled him forward into the depths of the forest secrets. He hesitated once more, then exhaled slowly, steadying himself. The forest seemed to breathe with him, the mist swirling around his boots. The footprints, the distant cry, they had shifted something within him. Not just curiosity, but a subtle awakening, as if a door had been nudged open, revealing that the forest's mysteries were closer than he thought. He understood now. Turning back was no longer an option. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but he knew that something awaited him, something that might finally give meaning to his relentless search. With a determined breath, Lucas stepped forward into the shadows, the echo of that haunting cry lingering in the stillness. Whatever lay ahead, he sensed that his journey was only just beginning, and that the forest's secrets would soon reveal themselves, whether as salvation or doom. The shadows lengthened as Lucas moved deeper into the forest, the narrow trail winding between ancient pines that seemed to close in around him. The canopy above thickened, allowing only fragmented rays of dawn to pierce through the dense branches, casting shifting patterns on the damp earth. His breath came steady but cautious, each step deliberate, mindful of every crackle of leaves beneath his boots and every loose stone that threatened his footing. The scent of pine resin and moist soil filled his nostrils, grounding him amid the creeping unease that grew with every passing moment. Suddenly, a faint scrape against bark broke the silence. Lucas froze, instinct sharpening. He scanned the towering trunks lining the trail, eyes narrowing in suspicion. Just ahead, he spotted it, a nearly perfect circle carved into the rough bark of a tall pine. The edges were sharp, the cut fresh, as if made moments ago. The geometric precision contrasted sharply with the rugged texture of the tree, causing his heartbeat to quicken. He stepped closer, studying the symbol with a mix of curiosity and wariness. The carving's symmetry was unnerving, almost unnaturally perfect in its execution. The forest around him seemed to hold its breath, the usual sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls muffled as if the woods were listening. Lucas's mind raced. Was this a warning? A message? Someone or something had left this sign deliberately, but for what purpose? His fingers reached out hesitantly, brushing the freshly cut wood, feeling the roughness under his fingertips. A faint metallic tang mingled with the scent of pine, perhaps from the tool used, or something more obscure. A shiver ran down his spine, not from the cold, but from the realization that this symbol carried weight beyond mere decoration. It was an intentional marker, meant to convey a message or a warning. He looked around, searching the surrounding undergrowth and canopy for signs of life. The woods stretched endlessly in every direction, silent except for the distant rustling of leaves. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow more vivid. Behind him, a branch snapped softly, breaking the stillness. Lucas instinctively turned, eyes darting for the source of the noise, but the forest remained quiet, unchanging. The shadow or movement he glimpsed had vanished. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Just beyond his line of sight, a shadow darted swiftly between trees. His pulse quickened, and he spun sharply, expecting to confront a figure or creature. But when he looked directly at the spot, only the dense woods greeted him, silent and still. The fleeting shadow had disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared. A wave of suspicion mingled with cautious hope. Could this mark be a sign of another person, perhaps an ally or a fellow seeker? Or was it a warning, a test to see if he would follow? The questions pressed heavily on his mind, each more urgent than the last. Lucas knelt beside the tree, inspecting the carving more closely. The edges were pristine, the lines sharp and deliberate. No natural element could produce such perfect geometry. He wondered about its purpose. Was it meant to guide him, to mark a specific location, or simply to unsettle? His fingers traced the circumference of the carving, feeling the coolness of the fresh wood, trying to decipher any hidden meaning or code. A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, whispering through the needles and stirring loose debris. It carried a faint, almost imperceptible sound, like a distant whisper, unintelligible yet oddly familiar. Lucas's senses sharpened. The wind seemed to carry a message, or perhaps a fragment of the forest's own language. His mind raced. Was this coincidence, or did the woods itself attempt to communicate? He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. The forest was alive with secrets waiting to reveal themselves. The carved circle was more than a mark. It was a piece of a larger puzzle, one that intertwined with his quest. Every discovery pulled him further into the mystery, igniting a fragile hope that he was on the right track. But beneath that hope lurked doubt. What if this symbol was a trap, a sign of danger nearby? His instincts urged caution, warning that each step might lead him into a deeper shadow. Yet turning back felt like surrender, and surrender was not an option. As he rose, movement flickered again, this time a shadow crossing behind a cluster of trees. He paused, eyes narrowing once more. The forest seemed to hold its breath, awaiting his decision. An almost primal instinct pushed him to stay alert, to listen more intently, trusting his intuition even when logic faltered. He cast one last glance at the carved circle, then turned onto the trail, the mystery deepening with every step. The forest's silent message was clear. The path ahead was not just about following footprints or avoiding threats, but about deciphering signs. Signs that might lead him toward the truth, or into a danger he had yet to imagine. Suddenly, a distant snap echoed louder than before, sharper and more deliberate. Lucas's eyes flicked toward the source, a fallen branch, but one that seemed intentionally disturbed. His grip tightened on his pack strap, sensing that he was no longer alone. The forest's quiet had become a tense hush, as if waiting for him to move. He hesitated, then shifted his course slightly, heading toward the sound. He needed to find out if this was a sign of life or a trap. As he moved, he kept his senses heightened, every step calculated, every shadow scrutinized. His mind raced. What was the purpose of the carving? Was it a message from someone watching, or merely a random mark left by the wind or animals? The trail wound deeper into the woods, and with each step, Lucas felt the weight of unseen eyes, the subtle pull of unseen threads guiding him. The forest was no longer just a place to traverse. It was a living puzzle, and he was beginning to understand that each sign, each whisper, was part of a larger design. By the time he reached a small clearing, the sun had dipped lower, shadows stretching long and dark. He paused, scanning the area. There was no sign of movement now, only the quiet rustling of leaves. Yet, he sensed that the forest had shifted, its secrets now more accessible, but also more dangerous. His eyes fell on the ground, where faint footprints led toward a dense thicket. The trail was recent, and the pattern suggested a hurried departure. Someone had been here, perhaps the same person who left the carving. Lucas's mind raced with possibilities. Was this a sign of an ally or a foe? Could he trust this new lead? He knelt again, examining the footprints, then looked back at the carved circle. The symbols, the signs, they were no longer random. They pointed toward something larger, something hidden beneath the forest's silent veneer. His understanding deepened. The forest was alive with messages, and he was beginning to decipher them. With renewed resolve, Lucas pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth behind the symbols and the unseen presence that seemed to watch him. The shadows still stretched long, but now they carried meaning, clues that could lead him to salvation or doom. The path was uncertain, but he knew that each step brought him closer to the heart of the mystery, and perhaps to the answers he desperately sought. Lucas paused at the edge of the small clearing, his fingers tightening around the strap of his backpack as he fought to steady his breathing. The midday sun filtered through the canopy, casting fractured light onto the mossy floor, but the serenity felt fragile, weighed down by an unshakable tension. A faint rustling in the undergrowth made him freeze, eyes darting across the shadows. Yet he saw only the gentle sway of leaves in the breeze. He had come here seeking clarity, but now doubt gnawed at his confidence. Something about this place felt different, as if unseen eyes watched him. He clenched his jaw and shifted his gaze upward, scanning the treetops for movement, but the forest remained still, almost unnaturally so. His heart pounded louder than the rhythmic hum of insects, each beat echoing the suspicion that he was not alone. The silence pressed in, thick and oppressive, yet he refused to turn back. Instead, he lowered himself onto a fallen log, pressing his palms into the rough bark, grounding himself against the rising unease. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a luminous white shape emerging from the shadows at the corner of his vision. His breath hitched, and he tensed, eyes widening as the figure stepped forward with deliberate calmness. It was a wolf, but unlike any he'd seen before. Its fur was pristine white, shimmering in the dappled sunlight, almost glowing with an otherworldly radiance. The creature moved with effortless grace, muscles rippling beneath its sleek coat, exuding quiet confidence as if it belonged entirely to this forest. The wolf's gaze fixed on him. Piercing, intelligent eyes met his own, unwavering and calm. Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine, the instinct to retreat battling with an inexplicable pull to stay still. The animal's expression was unreadable, neither threatening nor welcoming, merely observant. Its presence seemed to press against his senses, heightening his awareness of every heartbeat, every shallow breath. Time stretched as neither moved. The wolf's gaze seemed to penetrate deeper, as if attempting to read some hidden part of his soul. Lucas's mind raced, memories of stories and warnings flooding in. Wild animals could be unpredictable, even in moments of calm. Yet, he sensed no hostility, only a profound awareness that this creature was a guardian of sorts, a silent witness to the forest's secrets. Then, without warning, The wolf tilted its head slightly, a subtle gesture that seemed almost deliberate. Its eyes lingered on him for a moment longer, as if weighing a decision. In a fluid, almost ethereal motion, it took a single step backward, then another, gradually retreating toward the shadowed edge of the trees. The sunlight caught the edges of its fur, creating a shimmering halo around the animal as it disappeared behind a cluster of tall pines. Lucas watched in silence, frozen in place, until the last flash of white vanished into the darkness. His chest heaved, but a different feeling had begun to take hold, an odd sense of reassurance, as if the encounter had shifted something fundamental within him. The forest's oppressive silence dissolved into the familiar sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls, restoring a fragile normalcy. He exhaled slowly, his fingers trembling as he lowered himself onto the damp ground. His mind spun with questions. Was it coincidence? A trick of the light? Or was this creature something more? Perhaps a messenger or a symbol? The luminous wolf's calm, unwavering gaze haunted him, stirring a flicker of curiosity long thought extinguished. A faint thought surfaced. What if this was a sign, an invitation, or perhaps a warning? The wolf's silent departure seemed to carry a message, a reminder that the forest was alive and watching, its mysteries waiting to be uncovered. He felt a subtle shift within himself, a recognition that he was no longer merely wandering aimlessly. The encounter had awakened a new awareness, a connection to the wilderness that went beyond mere observation. He brushed dirt from his palms and looked around, noting how the cool air now felt charged with purpose. The forest silence was no longer empty. It was a dialogue, an unspoken invitation to listen more carefully. The presence of the wolf had planted a seed, an understanding that the forest's secrets were not just hidden, but actively observing, waiting for him to decipher them. Standing slowly, he kept his eyes on the shadows where the wolf had vanished. His heart was steadier now, less driven by fear and more by a quiet resolve. Whatever truths lay hidden beneath the canopy or within himself, he sensed that his journey was entering a new phase, one of deeper discovery and understanding. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, and stepped forward along the trail. The path ahead was uncertain, shrouded in mystery, but he no longer felt lost. Instead, he carried a new awareness. The forest was alive, watching, perhaps guiding him toward truths he was only beginning to comprehend. The encounter had revealed a fragment of the wilderness's depth, and he was ready to delve deeper into its silent, enigmatic embrace. As he moved deeper into the woods, the shadows lengthened, and the sense of being observed persisted, not as a threat, but as a quiet, protective presence. The forest's secrets had begun to reveal themselves, not through grand revelations, but through subtle signs and quiet nudges. Lucas felt a newfound connection, a sense that he was part of this place's ongoing story, and that his journey was far from over. The last rays of sunlight vanished behind the distant treetops, leaving the forest in an oppressive darkness that seemed almost alive. Lucas hurriedly set up his tent near a small clearing, the damp earth squelching beneath his boots. Heavy clouds cloaked the sky, smothering the fading glow and turning the world into shades of gray. A chill settled over him, seeping into his bones as the cool air carried the scent of wet leaves and moss. His fingers trembled as he rummaged through his pack, pulling out a frayed jacket and pulling it tight around his shoulders, trying to ward off the creeping fatigue that weighed him down after a day of relentless uncertainty. The silence was thick and almost suffocating, broken only by the rustling of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. The forest around him seemed to pulse with a subtle awareness, shadows flickering at the edge of his vision, as if the trees and darkness watched his every move. He paused, listening intently, but only the whisper of wind threading through branches reached his ears, carrying secrets he dared not interpret. His mind raced with questions. Was he truly close to the symbols he sought, or was his mind playing tricks in the solitude? He moved toward the small fire he had managed to ignite, the weak flicker of flames barely piercing the gloom. As he stared into the glow, his gaze drifted to the surrounding shadows, eyes darting from one form to another, searching for something familiar or threatening. Doubts gnawed at him. Was this place connected to the strange symbols, or was it merely coincidence? The tension from earlier encounters clung to him like a second skin, each crackle of a twig making his pulse jump. He clenched his jaw, trying to steady his nerves, but the forest silence felt heavy with unspoken messages. Suddenly, a faint glint caught his eye just outside the tent's entrance. He froze, heart pounding, as his eyes fixed on a small object lying on the damp earth. It was a feather, delicate, pristine white, shimmering faintly in the dim light. His brow furrowed. He had seen many birds in these woods, yet this feather seemed out of place, too perfect, too untouched by the elements. It looked almost otherworldly, a fragment of something not entirely natural. His fingers hesitated before reaching out, trembling slightly as he carefully picked it up. The texture was light and almost ethereal, as if it belonged to a creature from a realm beyond his understanding. A surge of curiosity mixed with unease. Was this feather a sign? A message from the forest or its unseen inhabitants? Or merely a strange coincidence? His stomach clenched, a mixture of hope and skepticism rising within him. He examined the feather closely, feeling its fragile barbs and smooth stem, trying to interpret what it could mean. Could it be a gift or a lure? Was the forest trying to communicate something, or was this just an accidental find? The woods seemed to respond to his thoughts, the wind picking up again, swirling softly around him. The faint whisper of the breeze felt almost like a voice, murmuring secrets just beyond his grasp. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, flickering like fleeting illusions. For a moment, he thought he saw movement, perhaps a flash of white or a quick shape darting behind the trees. His grip tightened on the feather, fingers curling instinctively as he stared into the darkness, searching for answers that refused to reveal themselves. A sudden, deliberate sound broke the stillness, soft paws padding away into the undergrowth. Not hurried, not frantic, but purposeful. Lucas's breath hitched, his muscles tensed as he froze, ears straining to catch any further noise. The sound was distant, but distinct enough to send a ripple of alertness through him. The creature was retreating, or perhaps observing from the shadows. He remained still, watching the darkness swallow the faint traces of movement, his mind racing to interpret its meaning. He lowered himself cautiously onto the damp ground, clutching the feather close to his chest. His thoughts spun with possibilities. Was it the wolf? Or another creature lurking in the night? The symbol of the feather seemed significant, yet its purpose remained unclear. Was it a sign of warning, a token of some unseen alliance, or simply a natural artifact caught by chance. His gaze flickered between the shadows and the faint glow of his dying fire, weighing each possibility. A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, causing branches to sway and leaves to murmur louder. Lucas shivered, not solely from the cold, but from a rising sense that the forest was revealing fragments of its hidden truths. The feather in his hand felt heavier, burdened with unspoken messages and secrets. Every rustle, every whisper seemed amplified, as if the trees themselves pondered his presence and the meaning behind his discovery. He cast a wary glance back toward his tent, then into the darkness beyond. The faint sound of retreating paws lingered in his ears, leaving him with a question that refused to fade. Was the creature trying to communicate? Or was this merely a coincidence, a fleeting shadow in the vast wilderness? His fingers traced the delicate contours of the feather, feeling its fragile structure under his fingertips. A strange resolve settled within him. He would have to decipher the forest's signals himself. No one else could do it for him. As he sat in silence, the night deepened around him, thick with shadows and whispers. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for him to understand its language. The feather in his hand felt heavier still, as if it carried the weight of unseen truths. He looked once more into the darkness, eyes searching for answers that continued to elude him. The faint sound of paws retreating into the night faded into the background, but a lingering thought persisted. Was the wolf trying to reach out? Or was this just another piece of the puzzle? Another sign leading him deeper into the unknown? He shifted his gaze downward, fingers gently tracing the fine barbs of the feather. A quiet determination grew within him. Whatever messages the forest sent, he would uncover them, no matter how cryptic or dangerous. The night stretched endlessly, filled with silent whispers and shifting shadows, promising that the answers he sought might be closer than he dared believe, or forever out of reach. But this time he felt a shift within himself, a flicker of purpose that had been missing before. The forest's secrets were no longer just distant mysteries. They were becoming a part of him. The forest around Lucas was shrouded in an oppressive darkness, the moonlight barely piercing the thick canopy. His small tent trembled slightly as a sudden noise shattered the silence. An unmistakable thud, heavy and deliberate, echoing from somewhere nearby. His pulse quickened, an instinct urged him to move, but he hesitated, knowing better than to rush blindly into the unknown. He pressed his ear against the fabric, trying to discern any pattern or reason behind the sound. Was it a falling branch, or something more purposeful? A flicker of doubt crept in. What if he was attracting unwanted attention? Gradually, he decided to investigate, but with caution. Reaching for his flashlight, he hesitated again, debating whether to step outside or wait for more clues. The decision felt weighted, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Finally, he unzipped the tent, the fabric whispering softly as he slipped into the cool night air. The scent of damp earth and pine filled his nostrils, grounding him. He moved silently, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness, illuminating patches of mossy ground and gnarled roots. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves seemed exaggerated, magnified by the silence. His eyes darted around, searching for the source of the noise. Shadows flickered between the trees, elusive and shifting. The forest appeared alive with unseen movement, as if watching him. His grip on the flashlight tightened, fingers trembling slightly as he aimed the narrow beam into the shadows. Then he saw them, two faint, shimmering spots of light, fixed steadily on him. His breath hitched, heart pounding. The glow was unnatural, almost hypnotic, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The eyes reflected his flashlight's beam with a cold, unblinking stare. He froze, instinct telling him to retreat, but curiosity rooted him in place. The glowing points blinked in unison, almost as if communicating silently. Lucas's mind raced. Were these creatures predators or guardians? The melodic hum that emanated from the darkness was unexpected, soothing even, contrasting sharply with the tension in his body. The glow seemed to pulse gently, softening as if acknowledging his presence rather than threatening it. He took a cautious step forward, voice barely above a whisper. "Who's there?" The words dissolved into the night, swallowed by the vast silence. No reply came, only the unwavering gaze of the luminous eyes. His eyes flicked between the two spots, searching for any sign of movement or recognition. A shiver ran down his spine as the realization dawned. These weren't ordinary animals. They moved with purpose, their glow hinting at some internal light, perhaps a sign of intelligence or mysticism. Were they protectors of the forest, or something else entirely? The questions gnawed at him, yet no answers emerged. He shifted his stance, trying to steady himself. The eyes flickered again, blinking in unison, as if testing his resolve. A faint breeze stirred the branches overhead, causing shadows to stretch and sway. His initial impulse was to retreat, but something about the calm, steady gaze of the creatures kept him rooted. He sensed that rushing away might be a mistake. Slowly, he lowered his flashlight, keeping it pointed at the glowing spots. The creatures remained motionless, their gaze fixed on him, assessing. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, until a faint, melodic hum drifted through the trees, soft, almost hypnotic, like a lullaby carried on the wind. It was neither threatening nor welcoming, simply present. The glow of the eyes softened, not vanishing, but diminishing in intensity, as if acknowledging his pause. Lucas felt a strange, almost magnetic pull, an internal shift that blurred the line between fear and fascination. He realized that these beings, whatever they were intertwined with the forest's ancient mysteries. Perhaps they were custodians, or perhaps watchers, observing his every move. His grip on the flashlight loosened slightly, and he allowed himself to breathe more steadily. He studied the faint flicker of the eyes, trying to decipher their message. Was this a form of communication, an invitation, or a warning? The melodic hum persisted, weaving through the night air, connecting him to the unseen inhabitants. A new understanding began to form. This wasn't just a moment of danger, but an encounter with something profound. The forest's secrets weren't meant to be forcibly uncovered. They were to be sensed and respected. The glow of the eyes, the gentle hum, the quiet acceptance, they all pointed toward a deeper harmony, one that Lucas was only beginning to perceive. He slowly lowered the beam of his flashlight further, eyes still locked on the luminous pair. The glow persisted but softened, as if acknowledging his cautious approach. His mind buzzed with questions. Who were these beings? What purpose did they serve? Were they protectors or merely curious witnesses? The melodic hum grew more distinct, resonating like a gentle thread tying him to the forest's hidden life. For a moment, he stood motionless, caught between awe and uncertainty. The shadows and light danced in a silent ballet, revealing that the boundary between himself and the wilderness was dissolving. In that stillness, an unspoken realization settled within him. Some of the forest's deepest secrets weren't meant for outright discovery, but for understanding through silence and patience. The glow of the eyes, the calming hum, they were symbols of a living world that thrived beyond human comprehension. He took a slow step back toward his tent, never taking his eyes off the faintly glowing spots. As he reached the shelter, he paused, glancing once more into the darkness. The eyes had vanished, fading into the blackness like stars slipping behind clouds, leaving only the memory of their presence. Exhaling slowly, Lucas felt a mixture of relief and a new, cautious curiosity. The night had shifted something within him, an awareness that the forest was alive with unseen forces, watching and waiting. The line between predator and protector blurred, and he sensed that his understanding of this place was only beginning to deepen. He turned back toward his tent, his steps deliberate and quiet. The fabric rustled softly as he entered, and he looked once more into the darkness outside. The glowing eyes were gone, but the sense of being watched lingered, a silent promise that the forest's mysteries were far from unraveled. As he zipped the tent closed, a faint smile touched his lips. He knew now that the forest held secrets not to be forced open, but to be felt, embedded in the heartbeat of the night, in the gentle pulse of unseen eyes. Whatever watched him was no longer just an unknown threat, but a part of this living, breathing wilderness. And in that realization, Lucas felt the first stirrings of trust, an understanding that he was not alone in the shadows, nor was he the only observer in this ancient, mysterious realm. A new dawn seeped through the tangled canopy, casting muted gold over the damp forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of moist earth and decay, the morning light filtering unevenly through the dense leaves. Shadows still clung to the undergrowth, but a subtle shift in atmosphere hinted that something had changed, an unspoken tension that prickled Lucas's skin. He moved cautiously, each step muffled by the damp soil beneath his boots, his senses heightened after hours of wandering. His eyes scanned the terrain, searching for signs of recent activity or movement. The faint tracks he'd observed earlier had become obscured, swallowed by roots and moss. Yet he persisted, driven by a fragile hope that they might lead him to answers. His fingers brushed against rough bark as he navigated, tracing the contours of a gnarled pine trunk, when a sudden gust of wind stirred the leaves, causing a faint ripple through the trees. A whisper of movement just beyond perception made him freeze. Every muscle tensed, senses sharpening. The forest had a reputation for playing tricks, branches snapping in the distance, shadows flickering at the edge of vision. He squinted, ears straining. Silence, then a deliberate crunch of twigs nearby, slow and measured. His heart quickened, but he kept his stance firm. The sounds felt purposeful, not accidental. The forest's murmurs of unseen creatures faded into background noise. Yet this particular noise carried an unmistakable intent. Lucas's gaze darted around, searching for the source, but only dense greenery met his eyes. Still, the prickling sensation persisted, an instinct warning him of unseen eyes watching. A few meters ahead, the terrain dipped into a small clearing, framed by thick bushes and drooping branches. As he approached, his eyes caught a cluster of objects out of place, a pile of discarded tools, rusted and half buried in the mud. A torn piece of cloth, faded and stained with dark patches, fluttered weakly in the breeze. His breath hitched. These were unmistakable signs of recent human presence. He crouched beside the debris, fingertips brushing the coarse fabric. The cloth was torn, unevenly ripped, as if hurriedly discarded. The tools lay scattered, an axe with a chipped blade, a bent knife, a broken pair of pliers. Each item suggested hurried activity, perhaps a struggle or a hasty retreat. His stomach clenched. Why would someone leave such remnants? Was it an indication of recent visitors, or something more sinister? A flicker of movement behind the bushes caught his eye. His muscles tensed further. He hesitated, considering calling out, but the words caught in his throat. The forest had already shown its capacity for deception. Speaking might only alert whoever, or whatever, was nearby. Instead, he reached for his knife, gripping it tightly, ready for whatever might emerge. Then, a faint voice drifted through the trees, distant but unmistakably clear enough to make his heart skip. It was a voice he recognized, soft, strained, almost breathless. "Lucas!" He froze, every nerve alert. The voice was familiar, tinged with desperation and hope. His mind spun, was it real, or a trick of exhaustion and loneliness? He strained to listen, eyes darting into the shadows. The voice persisted, wavering like a fragile thread woven into the silence. A shiver ran down his spine. The woods seemed to hold their breath, waiting for him to act. He moved cautiously toward the direction of the sound, each step deliberate, heart pounding with a mixture of longing and caution. The voice grew softer, more pleading. "Lucas, I'm here." The words floated on the breeze, carried by the faint rustling of leaves. His pulse quickened, a strange mixture of hope and dread flooding him. Could it be someone from his past? Or was this an illusion, a fragment of his fractured mind trying to fill the void? He reached a small clearing bathed in dappled sunlight, where patches of moss and fallen branches lay scattered. The voice was nearby now, just beyond a cluster of trees. He pressed himself against a sturdy trunk, peering out cautiously. From behind the foliage, a figure emerged, clad in dark clothing, their face obscured by shadow. The figure called his name again, voice softer but unmistakably real. Recognition flickered. Was it someone he knew? Someone alive? Or perhaps a hallucination born from fatigue and loneliness? The figure paused at the edge of the light, lips moving silently. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the unspoken plea in their eyes. Searching, waiting. Lucas's grip on his knife tightened, instinct warning him to be wary. Yet, a flicker of hope urged him forward. Suddenly, the figure stepped into a patch of sunlight, revealing more of their form. The face remained hidden, but the posture was familiar enough to stir a complex wave of emotion. The voice called again, softer now, yet undeniably genuine. "Lucas." The figure's lips moved, but no sound emerged, only the silent plea in their eyes. His breath caught, and he hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution, but his heart yearned for connection. Was this a sign? A guide? Or just a cruel illusion designed to lure him deeper into the woods? A distant echo responded, another voice calling back from deeper within the forest. The sound was faint, but carried a weight of familiarity, tightening his throat. Was it a reassurance? or a warning. He took a tentative step forward, muscles tense, eyes fixed on the shadowed figure. The forest seemed to hold its breath again, waiting for his choice, to follow the voice into the unknown or retreat into silence and doubt. His hand hovered near his belt, clutching the worn pendant he always carried, an anchor amid uncertainty. With a deep breath, Lucas made his decision. He would follow that voice, however fragile or deceptive it might be. The forest's secrets had become too entangled to ignore, and he needed answers, truths buried beneath layers of shadows. As he moved toward the figure, the distant call faded into the background, replaced by the gentle hum of life around him. Each step grew heavier, yet somehow lighter, driven by a mixture of hope and necessity. Somewhere ahead, the truth awaited, hidden among the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. The woods seemed to lean in, listening, watching, as Lucas stepped deeper into the unknown, determined to find the source of the voice, and perhaps himself. Lucas paused at the edge of the clearing, eyes narrowing as they fixed on the weathered wooden structure ahead. The small cabin seemed oddly out of place amid the dense trees, its paint faded and peeling, yet it stood resilient against the relentless passage of years. The air around it was thick with the scent of damp wood and earthy herbs, a mixture that felt strangely grounding yet laced with an unspoken mystery. His fingers tightened around the strap of his backpack, hesitation flickering in his chest, but he pushed through the low-hanging branches and stepped onto uneven ground. The door groaned softly as he pushed it open, revealing a dim interior illuminated by the fractured sunlight filtering through cracks in the walls. The room was modest but inviting, cluttered with maps, sketches, and photographs pinned haphazardly across the walls. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling, their faint aroma blending with the scent of aged wood. Lucas's gaze drifted over the familiar symbols and images, each one hinting at a desperate attempt to decipher or control the forest's hidden secrets. A sudden movement from the corner startled him into a reflexive freeze. Inside, a figure rose slowly from the shadows, causing his pulse to quicken. The woman was slightly taller than him, her tangled hair streaked with gray, dirt smudged across her face. Yet her eyes held a calm intensity that immediately displaced suspicion. She held a small, worn knife in her hand, but lowered it as she saw his cautious stance, her posture relaxed but alert. "Who are you?" she asked softly, voice steady but edged with curiosity. Lucas hesitated, then took a cautious step forward, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "My name is Lucas. I've been wandering these woods for days, following signs, trying to understand what's happening here. I didn't expect to find anyone else." Her expression softened slightly, her gaze assessing. "I've been here longer than I care to admit." "Elena," she said, extending a hand. He accepted it, feeling the rough calluses beneath her fingers. "Why did you come?" she pressed, withdrawing her hand but remaining watchful. "I've seen things, symbols carved into trees, footprints, strange animals. I thought I was losing my mind, but now I believe these signs are connected. I've been searching for someone who might understand them." Elena nodded slowly, her eyes flickering with a mixture of recognition and caution. "You're not the only one. I've been tracking the same patterns, strange symbols, noises at night. I've also seen the white wolf. It's not just an animal. It's a messenger, or perhaps a guardian." Lucas's brow furrowed. "The wolf, you've seen it too?" She stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Yes, and it's no ordinary creature. It appears unexpectedly, often at moments that feel like turning points. I believe it's connected to the forest's deeper secrets, something beyond what we can see with our eyes. He studied her carefully, noting the sincerity in her tone. Do you think it's trying to tell us something or guide us? Elena paused, her gaze fixed on a photograph pinned to the wall, an image of the white wolf captured in a fleeting moment of stillness. I think it's more than that. The wolf is part of the forest consciousness. It's as if the woods are alive and watching, and this creature acts as a bridge between what's hidden and what's known. A flicker of hope ignited within Lucas. For the first time since entering these woods, he felt a tangible possibility, a direction amid the chaos. But beneath that hope lurked a shadow of doubt. Could they truly trust each other? Could they trust what they were seeing? Elena seemed to sense his hesitation. We need to share what we found. The symbols, the signs, they're all connected. And I think the key lies in understanding the wolf's role. It's no coincidence that you saw it, and I saw it too. He nodded slowly. Then we should combine our knowledge. Maybe together, we can uncover the truth behind all this. She gestured toward a cluttered table, strewn with sketches and notes. I've been mapping the symbols I found, trying to decipher their meaning. I believe they're part of a larger pattern, something ancient, perhaps sacred. I've also recorded strange sounds at night, whispering, almost like voices. Lucas stepped closer, examining her sketches. Can I see? She handed him a sheet filled with symbols and lines, their meanings still unclear. Some resemble carvings I've seen on trees. Others are unfamiliar. I think they're messages, directions, warnings, or perhaps a call to action. He studied the symbols, feeling a strange resonance, like they stirred something deep inside. What about the sounds? Did you record them? Elena nodded, retrieving a small device from her bag. She pressed play, and a faint, ghostly whisper filled the room. Indistinct words layered over the rustling of leaves. The voice was layered, haunting, as if coming from all directions simultaneously. Do you hear that? She asked softly. Yes, Lucas replied, voice barely above a whisper. It's like the forest is speaking in a language we don't understand yet. She looked at him with a mixture of relief and concern. We're not just chasing signs. We're trying to listen to something much older, something that's been here long before us. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, causing the candles to flicker. Outside, the forest seemed to pulse with life, shadows shifting at the edge of sight. Both paused, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down. Elena broke the silence. There's more. I've seen the wolf several times now, always nearby when I find a new symbol or hear strange sounds. It's as if it's guiding me or testing me. Lucas looked out the window, watching the trees sway in a restless rhythm. And what do you think it wants? She shrugged, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. That's what we need to figure out. But I believe it's connected to the symbols, the whispers, and maybe even what lies beneath the forest surface. He took a deep breath, feeling the flicker of hope grow stronger. For the first time, he saw a way forward, not as a lone wanderer lost in the woods, but as part of something larger, something with the potential to reveal the truth. Elena reached out, her hand brushing his arm briefly. We can't do this alone. Whatever is happening here, it's bigger than us. But together, perhaps we can understand it. Lucas met her gaze, the tension easing into resolve. Then let's keep listening to the signs, to the forest, and to the wolf. Because I have a feeling that the only way we'll uncover what's truly hidden beneath these trees. As shadows lengthened outside, a new understanding blossomed, an unspoken promise to face the mysteries ahead, no matter how uncertain the path. The forest pressed in around Lucas and Elena as they pressed deeper among twisted branches and tangled undergrowth. The sky above was heavy with thickening clouds, casting a dim, slate-gray pallor over the landscape. Shadows flickered and shifted with every gust of wind, which carried a low, whispering hum, almost like distant voices or secrets slipping through the air. Every step they took seemed more calculated, every snap of a twig underfoot amplified by the oppressive silence that stretched between them. The humid, heavy air clung to their skin, each breath feeling slower, more deliberate, as if the forest itself was weighing down on them. Elena kept her gaze fixed ahead, her posture tense but controlled. She paused briefly, tilting her head to listen to the shifting sky, then turned to Lucas with a look of quiet determination. Stay close. The trail's uncertain and the weather's worsening. We won't have much visibility if it starts pouring. Her voice was calm but firm, carrying a sense of resolve that masked her underlying concern. Lucas nodded, pulling his jacket tighter, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing against his chest, yet knowing they couldn't afford hesitation. Guided by the faint signs Elena had noted earlier, the snapped branch, displaced leaves, they moved forward cautiously. The wind grew stronger again, whispering urgent, fragmented words, as if the forest was trying to warn or command them. Lucas's senses sharpened. Shadows seemed to hide unseen threats or perhaps allies. His eyes flicked between the wavering silhouettes of distant trees, their outlines shimmering in the gusts. Suddenly, a violent gust caused a branch to sway wildly, scraping against another with a sharp, metallic screech that echoed unnaturally. "Did you hear that?" Elena asked softly, her voice tense. Lucas hesitated, listening intently. The woods responded with a deep, resonant rumble, something more than wind, a deliberate movement. His brow furrowed as he scanned the darkness, instinct telling him this was no ordinary sound. A subtle flicker at the edge of his vision drew his attention. He froze, muscles tensing. A shadow darted behind a cluster of bushes, quick and fleeting. Elena saw it too, her body stiffening. "Could be an animal," she murmured, though her tone betrayed doubt. Lucas shook his head slowly. The woods had become too strange, too unpredictable. Whatever was approaching was not wildlife. He took a steadying breath, tried to suppress the rising unease. "Stay alert," he whispered. The wind shifted again, carrying a rhythmic rustling that seemed to come from all directions simultaneously. It was as if the forest itself was whispering a warning, urging them to reconsider their path. Elena gripped her staff tightly, eyes scanning the shadows with renewed focus. "We need to move faster," she said quietly. "Whatever's out there might not be alone." They pressed on, following the faint trail of the wolf, recent, clear, guiding them through the labyrinth of branches and roots. Every step was cautious, deliberate. The oppressive atmosphere thickened. The canopy above blocked out most of the remaining sunlight. The whispers of the wind grew louder, more insistent, as Lucas felt a prickling along his skin, as if unseen eyes watched from the darkness. Suddenly, a loud rustling erupted nearby. Both froze instantly. The noise was unnatural, jarring against the usual symphony of forest sounds. Elena's grip on her staff tightened as her eyes darted toward the source. A quick movement, something small, swift, slipped through the underbrush, vanishing behind a fallen log. Her eyes narrowed, trying to identify the shape. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Then, from the shadows, came a faint crackling, tiny, irregular snaps and rustles, as if something was trying to hide or slip past unnoticed. Lucas took a cautious step forward, voice barely above a whisper. What was that? Elena kept her gaze fixed, her senses alert. Not sure, she replied softly, but we're close. Whatever it is, it knows we're here now. A sudden gust of wind caused a branch overhead to sway violently, its movement loud against the stillness. Then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, light, measured, purposeful, approached from the east. Lucas and Elena instinctively pressed themselves against the trunk of a sturdy tree, holding their breath, tense. The footsteps grew louder, more rhythmic. From the shadows emerged a figure, cloaked, indistinct, moving with intent. The silhouette was too dark to see clearly, but its posture suggested someone or something watching, waiting silently. Lucas's eyes caught a faint flicker, an eye, reflecting in the gloom, staring back with unwavering focus. They stood motionless, caught between suspicion and a fragile sense of trust. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the wind's whispers and rustling leaves blending into a chorus of uncertainty. The figure paused, then continued its silent approach, slow but deliberate. Elena's grip tightened on her staff as she stepped forward slightly, ready to confront or retreat depending on what was revealed. Lucas's heart quickened, not from fear, but from a strange, rising anticipation. The forest secrets were revealing themselves, layer by layer. Suddenly, the figure stopped a few meters away. A soft voice broke the silence, calm, steady, with an edge of authority. You shouldn't be here. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The revelation shifted their understanding of the situation. The figure's tone implied they had crossed into forbidden territory or were unwelcome intruders. Elena's eyes narrowed as she prepared to respond, while Lucas's mind raced, trying to decipher whether this was an ally, a threat, or something else entirely. In that moment, Elena lowered her staff slightly, exchanging a quick glance with Lucas. They realized that their presence had triggered this encounter, and that their journey into the forest was no longer a simple exploration. They had stumbled into a place with unseen rules and guardians. As the figure remained silent, Lucas felt a new awareness settle over him. The forest was no longer just a backdrop of shadows and whispers. It was a living entity, watching and responding. Their understanding of the landscape, the threats, and their own vulnerability had deepened. The sky above continued to darken, the clouds thickening further, promising a storm. The wind's whispers grew more insistent, almost urgent. Elena tightened her grip on her staff, ready for what might come next, while Lucas prepared himself for a confrontation that could change everything. The figure shifted slightly, then spoke again, voice softer but unmistakably firm. Turn back now. This place is not safe for outsiders. The warning was clear. The forest's secrets had been partially unveiled, but the true danger remained hidden in the shadows. The chapter closed with Lucas and Elena exchanging a tense look, aware that their situation had shifted dramatically. Their understanding of the forest's mysteries and their own purpose had deepened, setting the stage for the next chapter's revelations. Lightning cleaved the sky with jagged fury, illuminating the dense canopy in stark, fleeting flashes. Thunder rumbled ominously, echoing through the forest, warning of the storm's relentless advance. The wind howled fiercely, tearing at branches and whipping leaves into frenzied spirals. Lucas and Elena pressed their backs against a fallen log, their breath shallow, eyes fixed on the chaos around them as the tempest roared overhead. Suddenly, the shrill grind of chainsaws shattered the storm's symphony. The metallic screeches cut through the rain and wind, a brutal rhythm that underscored the destruction unfolding beneath the storm's shadow. The ground beneath their feet vibrated faintly, an ominous tremor that seemed to protest the violence inflicted upon the forest. Flashes of lightning revealed silhouettes of workers, clad in rain-soaked hoods and hard hats, wielding machinery with ruthless precision. Men shouted commands over the din, their voices barely audible against the storm's fury. Elena's eyes widened as she pointed toward a clearing where a group of loggers had gathered around felled trees. She recognized the pattern, the relentless cutting, the splinters flying into the air, mud splattering across the forest floor. Her voice trembled with urgency. "Lucas, look, they're destroying everything. They're not stopping." He clenched his fists, a surge of helpless rage tightening his jaw. His mind raced. This was no accident. It was deliberate, a calculated act of devastation. "We can't just watch," he muttered through clenched teeth. "We have to do something." A sudden flash of lightning struck nearby, casting an eerie, ghostly glow over the scene. For a split second, Lucas saw the glint of metal. Axes, shovels, the chains of the saws, each tool a symbol of destruction. The earth beneath them shuddered again as a massive tree gave way, crashing down with a deafening boom that shook the ground and sent a spray of mud and debris into the air. The noise was deafening, drowning out the thunder, and for a moment, the entire forest seemed to hold its breath. Elena reached out, grabbing Lucas's arm with trembling fingers. "We can't just stand here," she whispered fiercely. "They're tearing apart our home. We have to stop them." He nodded, eyes blazing with resolve. "We have to try. We can't let this continue." Without hesitation, they pushed through the underbrush, rain slicking their skin and making movement treacherous. Every step was a struggle against the slick ground and the howling wind, but their determination propelled them forward. As they neared the edge of the clearing, the loggers noticed the movement. "Hey, who's there?" one shouted, voice muffled by rain and distance. Several men turned, raising their tools, suspicion etched into their faces. Elena stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "Stop. This isn't right. You're destroying the forest, our home. You can't just cut everything down without consequences." The leader of the crew, a burly man with a jagged scar crossing his cheek, sneered. "What's it to you? This land's ours now. We've got orders, and we're finishing the job." His voice was rough, edged with impatience and authority. Lucas's jaw tightened, searching for words that might halt the machinery. But before he could speak, a flicker of movement caught his eye. One of the workers, a younger man, hesitated as he approached a fallen log. His hand lingered near his pocket, clutching something small and shiny, a knife. The storm raged on, but a new tension simmered in the air. The group's focus shifted from the trees to the intruders. The chainsaws revved louder, sparks flying from the grinding blades. The ground trembled again as another trunk was severed, crashing down with a thunderous impact. Elena's voice cracked with desperation. Please, think about what you're doing. This forest has a spirit. A sudden, deafening crack of thunder drowned her out. The young man's hand darted out, pulling a small knife from his pocket. His eyes flickered with fear and defiance, trembling as he hesitated. The leader barked an order, raising his hand. Get them! The loggers surged forward, chainsaws roaring and shovels raised. Lucas lunged to block one, but he was outnumbered. Elena stepped beside him, her voice rising above the chaos. Stop! You're destroying more than trees. You're killing the soul of this place. A brilliant flash of lightning illuminated the scene, casting stark shadows. The storm's energy seemed to crackle in the air, both from the tempest and the rising tension. The young man's hand trembled, the shiny object catching the lightning's glare. Suddenly, a different sound broke through, the cracking of a tree at an unnatural angle, blocking the machinery's path. The loggers froze, confusion flickering across their faces. The wind howled louder, bending the remaining trees and creating a cacophony of cracking branches and swirling leaves. Seizing the moment, Lucas shouted, Stop! Leave it alone! The leader hesitated, eyes narrowing. Who do you think you are? Stay out of this. Elena stepped forward again, voice steady. This forest is alive. You're killing it, and it's fighting back. If you push further, you'll regret it. A second lightning strike split the sky, illuminating the scene with blinding light. The wind whipped harder, rain pounding down like icy fists. The loggers looked unsettled, some glancing nervously at the darkened trees and the swirling storm. In that tense moment, the young man lowered his knife slowly, stepping back as if surrendering. The others hesitated, sensing the shift. The leader cursed softly, waving his crew to stand down. The storm's fury persisted, but a strange calm settled over the forest. The battered trees seemed to hold their breath, resilient against the chaos. Lucas and Elena exchanged glances, relief tinged with caution. They had disrupted the destruction, at least for now. As the rain eased slightly, Lucas looked toward the horizon, where the storm's edge was already retreating. The forest had fought back, and that victory, fragile as it was, carried a weight beyond words. It hinted that the fight was far from over, but they had bought precious time. They knew they couldn't stay long. The loggers might regroup, return, or report what had happened. But for this moment, the woods remained alive, bruised but unbroken, and that realization rekindled their resolve. The storm's departure left behind a battered but resilient forest, and in their hearts, a renewed determination to protect it. As they turned to leave, Elena glanced back at the darkened trees, feeling the faint pulse of life still beating beneath the storm scars. Lucas's gaze was steady, a quiet promise that they would return, stronger, wiser, ready to fight again. The storm had tested them, but it had also awakened something in both of them. Hope that even in destruction, nature's spirit could endure. The moon cast a pale, icy glow over the dense woods as Lucas and Elena pressed themselves against the damp earth behind a fallen log, their breaths shallow and ragged. Shadows danced at the edge of their vision, flickering with every rustle of leaves, while distant shouts echoed through the trees, mingling with the relentless drone of machinery. The air was thick with the scent of wet soil and burnt fuel, sharp metallic fumes from nearby equipment punctuating the night. Every sound seemed magnified. Each snap of a twig or crackle of branches heightened their alertness, sharpening their senses. Elena pressed a finger to her lips, her eyes flickering toward the faint glow of approaching headlights piercing the darkness. The distant hum of chainsaws and the clang of metal against wood grew louder, signaling that the loggers were closing in. Their mission had been reckless but vital: disable the machinery to buy precious time for the forest defenders. Yet, the threat of discovery pressed down on them like an iron weight, tightening their nerves. A sudden shout shattered the tense silence, sharp, commanding. "Hey, did you see that movement?" A voice barked, followed by hurried footsteps crunching through twigs and leaves. Lucas clenched his makeshift weapon. A sturdy branch sharpened at one end, and exchanged a quick, tense glance with Elena. Their plan had been simple: sabotage the equipment and slip away unnoticed. But now, the stakes had escalated dramatically. Elena nodded silently, clutching a small toolkit. Her trembling fingers reached into her pocket, retrieving a crowbar and a set of pliers. The nearest generator rumbled ominously, its thick cables snaking toward the forest floor. With deliberate care, Elena inserted the crowbar beneath the casing, prying it open just enough to expose the tangled wiring inside. Sparks sputtered as she worked, the metallic cover resisting her efforts. Suddenly, shouts erupted from the clearing, more urgent, more frantic. "There! Over there!" a voice yelled, followed by the unmistakable flicker of flashlights sweeping through the underbrush. The beams cut through the darkness, illuminating the forest floor and casting shifting shadows that seemed to dance with malevolent intent. Elena's eyes widened. She yanked a wire free, sparks flying from the exposed connection. The generator coughed, its hum faltering into a sputtering cough, then died. The machinery lurched, and a cascade of crashing sounds erupted as the system ground to a halt. Their eyes widened in triumph. Success, but only fleeting. Before they could celebrate, a sharp snap of a branch under weight drew their attention. The shouts grew louder, more aggressive. The beams of light darted over their hiding spot, sweeping the underbrush with relentless precision. Lucas pressed himself flat against the damp ground, clutching the branch tightly as the searchlight paused momentarily, then moved on. "Damn it," Elena whispered, her voice trembling with urgency. "They're onto us. We need to get out before." A commanding voice boomed through the trees, thick with authority. "Stop right there. Who's out there?" The unmistakable click of a rifle cocking sent a shiver down their spines, the cold metal echoing through the woods. Lucas's mind raced. Staying here was suicide. They had to move now. Elena signaled him silently. They crawled across uneven terrain, slipping past tangled roots and fallen branches, trying to stay hidden from the searchlight's glare. The beams flickered, casting fleeting illumination that seemed to probe every shadow. Their movements were cautious but swift, each step pushing them closer to the forest's darker corners. A distant shout prompted Elena to whisper, "We need to split up, cover more ground." Lucas hesitated only a moment before nodding. They veered in opposite directions, shadows swallowing their forms as they plunged deeper into the darkness. Their breathing grew ragged, the adrenaline dulling the ache of exhaustion. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of twig became a warning sign. Lucas darted between thick clusters of trees, catching glimpses of the loggers, a ragged band, some with tools in hand, others with firearms, faces twisted with suspicion and frustration. The forest seemed to close in around him, the canopy blocking out the sky, leaving only the dim moonlight filtering through the leaves. He pressed on, heart pounding, until he reached a narrow, overgrown trail. Here, the pursuit's noise faded into muffled shouts and the distant hum of engines dying away. He paused behind a dense thicket, trying to steady his trembling hands and listen. The chaos had lessened, but an unsettling feeling of vulnerability persisted. Meanwhile, Elena moved along a different trail, her mind racing to evaluate their situation. They had managed to disable some machinery, but at what cost? The forest, which had once seemed eerily silent, now thrummed with the aftermath of violence. Every crack of a twig and rustle of leaves felt magnified, a stark reminder of how fragile their resistance truly was. As Lucas sheltered behind the bushes, he examined the symbols they had uncovered earlier. Strange markings carved into trees, faint symbols painted on rocks, each one a fragment of a larger, mysterious puzzle. Did their sabotage matter, or had they merely delayed the inevitable, giving the loggers more time to return? These questions gnawed at him, yet beneath the doubt, a quiet resolve was forming. They had taken a stand, however small, against the relentless machinery of destruction. Suddenly, a faint glow caught his eye, a shimmering white feather lying atop the mossy ground. He reached out, fingers trembling, and gently lifted it. The feather's pristine whiteness seemed to pulse with a silent message, a symbol of fragile hope amid chaos. As he stared at it, a faint rustling behind him made him freeze. Shadows flickered at the edge of the clearing, more than one figure, watching silently from the darkness. A realization struck him sharply. They were not alone. The forest had shifted from a silent witness to an active participant. The presence of the watchers, the symbols, and the feather all hinted at a deeper connection, perhaps a spiritual guardian or an ancient force protecting this place. The quiet strength of the woods, the symbols, and the white wolf. These elements had guided him here, and now they seemed to affirm his purpose. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the moment settle within him. The forest's silent resilience, the mysterious symbols, and the white feather all underscored that their fight was far from over. The danger was still imminent, but so was the hope. Their actions, small as they seemed, could ignite change. The woods had accepted their presence, and perhaps, in some silent way, they had begun to accept themselves anew. The shadows receded, and Lucas took a deep breath, clutching the feather tightly. The night stretched on, thick with uncertainty, but also with the promise of renewal. The battle for the forest's soul was just beginning, and he was ready to face it. Morning light filtered softly through the dense canopy, casting shifting patterns onto the forest floor. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, carrying the crisp scent of damp earth and pine. Lucas stood motionless at the edge of a small clearing, eyes fixed on the ground where a tiny, intricately carved stone rested among fallen leaves and moss. The sun's rays caught its smooth surface, illuminating faint runes etched into its sides, symbols he recognized from old stories, yet never seen so clearly. His breathing slowed as he knelt, fingertips brushing the cool stone. It felt warm, almost alive, as if the forest itself had gifted it during the night. The memory of the white wolf flickered briefly in his mind. Calm eyes, a silent gesture of trust. Its departure had been silent, slipping back into shadows before dawn. Now, clutching this artifact, Lucas sensed an unspoken message, a connection that transcended words. He hesitated, eyes drifting upward toward the awakening sun. The sky was painted in soft hues of amber and pink, heralding a new day. For the first time in many weeks, he felt a faint sense of peace, a whisper of certainty threading through his doubts. The surrounding forest seemed to breathe differently, less tense, more receptive. The silence was no longer oppressive, but inviting, as if the woods acknowledged his presence and purpose. Carefully, he rose, clutching the carved stone. His footsteps pressed softly into the moss as he moved toward an ancient oak nearby. Its gnarled branches stretched outward, roots twisting into the earth like veins of some great creature. Lucas reached out and placed the stone at the base of the tree. He took a moment to study the symbols again, tracing their shapes with his eyes, trying to decipher their meaning. A gentle breeze stirred, causing leaves to flutter and revealing a faint shimmer on the ground nearby. He looked down to see a trail of sparkling dust leading from the stone to a cluster of bushes. Curiosity prickled anew, but this time it was tempered by a sense of purpose. He knelt again, brushing aside twigs and leaves to uncover a weathered wooden figurine half buried in the soil. Its features were crude but expressive, a figure with outstretched arms carved with care. A thrill ran through him, sharper now. Someone or something had left these tokens, perhaps the wolf, perhaps a guardian of the forest's hidden secrets. The presence of the carved stone, the figurine, and the trail all formed a silent message, urging him onward, to trust his instincts and follow this trail deeper into the woods. Suddenly, movement caught his eye, an unexpected flicker of white at the corner of his vision. His gaze snapped to the side, narrowing. At the edge of the clearing, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in a tattered garment, face obscured by shadows. But the unmistakable gleam of white fur was clear, the wolf. It approached slowly, deliberately, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Lucas took a cautious step forward, instinct overriding hesitation. The wolf paused, locking eyes with him, a silent communication passing between them. In that gaze, he saw patience, trust, and something more profound, recognition of his commitment, acknowledgement of the bond forming through shared silence and understanding. The wolf lowered its head slightly, nudging the carved stone with its snout. The gesture was reverent, almost ceremonial. Lucas hesitated briefly, then reached out, fingers brushing the animal's soft fur, feeling the warmth beneath the coarse coat. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, every leaf and branch waiting in anticipation. A distant bird call shattered the moment, a single, clear note echoing through the trees. The wolf stepped back, turning slightly to face the rising sun, as if signaling a new beginning. Lucas followed its gaze upward, noticing how the morning light now seemed brighter, more alive. Shadows receded, replaced by the promise of clarity. He inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with the crisp, invigorating air. For the first time in a long while, clarity settled within him. The forest was no longer a place of confusion and fear, but a living entity that accepted him. He was part of this cycle, this delicate balance. He straightened, voice steady despite the tumult of thoughts. "I will stay," he whispered, almost to himself. "I will protect what remains." The words felt heavy but necessary, an affirmation born from trust and newfound understanding. The wolf lingered for a moment longer, then melted into the shadows, leaving Lucas alone in the clearing. The silence returned, peaceful yet filled with promise. The carved stone remained at the base of the ancient oak, a quiet reminder of the bond sealed in this dawn. Turning back toward the forest, Lucas's lips curled into a faint smile. The uncertainty that had haunted him was easing. The path ahead might still hold shadows and doubts, but now he understood he was no longer adrift. The forest had gifted him a symbol: hope, renewal, a purpose. He stepped forward, deeper into the woods, each movement deliberate. The trees stood tall and silent, witnesses to his decision. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang again, brighter and clearer than before, as if welcoming his choice. The dawn's light grew stronger, casting golden rays across the landscape. In that moment, Lucas realized this was not just a new day. It was the start of a different life. A life rooted in trust, connection, and the quiet strength of the forest itself. He no longer felt lost, only ready to listen and protect what had become his purpose. The forest's mysteries remained, but now they shimmered with hope rather than dread. Clutched in his hand, the carved stone felt like a gift, a promise that he was exactly where he needed to be, part of something greater. He moved deeper into the woods, every step purposeful. The trees stood as silent witnesses, guardians of his transformation. Somewhere in the distance, a songbird's call echoed brighter, clearer, welcoming him into this new chapter. The morning light bathed the landscape in gold, illuminating the path ahead. And as he pressed onward, Lucas understood that this dawn marked not just a new day, but the beginning of a life rebuilt, one of trust, connection, and quiet strength. The forest had shown him its secrets. Now he was ready to listen, to protect, and to belong. The forest stretched out before him, a living mosaic pulsating with vitality. Leaves shimmered with a renewed glow, and the gentle breeze carried a subtle scent of earth and pine, signaling a quiet rebirth. Lucas moved cautiously, each step deliberate, feeling the ground respond beneath his feet as if the very soil acknowledged his efforts. The months of relentless work, clearing debris, planting new saplings, repairing the scars of past destruction, had transformed not only the landscape, but also his inner world. A newfound steadiness settled within him, rooted in the tangible signs of recovery. Beside him, Elena's hands were streaked with soil, her face illuminated by the soft glow of dawn. Their collaboration had been driven by necessity and hope, each task motivated by a shared desire to restore what had been lost. They had faced setbacks, unexpected storms, stubborn weeds, patches of stubborn land resistant to rebirth, but each obstacle had only strengthened their resolve. Today, the landscape bore the marks of their perseverance, trees sprouting new shoots from broken branches, wildflowers blooming in patches that once seemed barren. Lucas's gaze shifted to a small clearing where a cluster of young saplings had recently taken root. He paused, observing the canopy above, where sunlight filtered through leaves in a shimmering dance of golden green. The rhythmic rustling of branches seemed to whisper reassurance, as if the forest itself acknowledged their work. A faint breeze stirred the air, carrying a familiar scent of pine and damp earth, grounding him further in the moment. A subtle movement caught his eye, a flash of silvery fur at the edge of his vision. Instinctively, he tensed, recalling the white wolf's presence, which had become a silent guardian woven into this landscape's fabric. He remembered the first time he saw it, distant yet unwavering, eyes calm and unblinking. Its appearance now was more sporadic, yet Lucas felt its watchful gaze lingering nearby, as if the creature was assessing the progress of their efforts. He knelt beside a patch of newly planted ferns, fingers brushing the cool, moist soil. This connection to the land was no longer abstract. It was a living, breathing bond forged through patience and perseverance. Each seed planted, each obstacle overcome, had deepened his understanding that the forest was not merely a refuge, but an extension of himself, a testament to resilience and respect. Elena approached quietly, her voice soft but steady. "Look at this, Lucas. It's like the forest is waking up again," she said, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "We brought life back to this place." He nodded, a gentle smile touching his lips. "It's more than that. We're helping it remember how to heal, how to thrive." His gaze lingered on the lush greenery, the delicate balance restored. This forest is alive, and it's resilient. Maybe it always was. A gentle wind picked up, carrying an almost imperceptible sound, a whisper of ancient knowledge. Lucas's eyes drifted toward the horizon, where, beyond the trees, a faint silvery shape moved with deliberate grace. The white wolf's form was distant, blending seamlessly with the dawn-lit landscape. Yet, he felt its presence, an unspoken acknowledgement of their shared achievement. Their eyes met briefly, and Lucas sensed a profound connection, as if the guardian spirit was silently approving of the progress made. He moved closer to a patch of ferns, kneeling to examine the damp soil. His fingers traced the roots, feeling the life pulsing beneath. The land's resilience was now intertwined with his own. Each act of nurturing had awakened a deeper understanding. This forest was no longer just a place to restore, but a partner in renewal. Its silent language of growth and rebirth resonated within him. Elena's voice broke the quiet. "We've learned so much," she said softly, "not just about the land, but about ourselves, about patience and hope." Lucas looked around again, absorbing the scene. The vibrant greenery, the gentle sunlight filtering through leaves, the faint rustling of branches. But beneath the serenity, a new awareness simmered. The white wolf's intermittent appearances had shifted from distant observations to a more intentional presence. He sensed that the creature's role was evolving, perhaps now as a guide rather than just a silent sentinel. A flicker of movement at the edge of his vision drew his attention. The white wolf stepped into a clearer view, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost deliberate. Its silver coat shimmered in the morning light as it paused briefly, then continued its silent patrol, as if checking on the progress of the land and its guardians. The wolf's calm, unblinking eyes met Lucas's for a fleeting moment, conveying a silent message, an affirmation that their efforts aligned with the forest's own rhythm. Lucas inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with the crisp, invigorating air. The doubts that had once clouded his mind, the fear of failure, the uncertainty of the future, began to dissolve. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a clarity born from the harmony he now sensed between himself, the land, and the unseen protector. The forest was no longer a mystery to solve or a threat to fear. It was a living partner, its resilience mirroring his own. As they prepared to move forward, a gentle tug at his consciousness emerged, a whisper of questions. What lies ahead? Will this fragile harmony endure? And what is the true nature of the wolf watching from shadows? These uncertainties no longer cast shadows over him, but instead sparked a quiet hope, a recognition that the journey was ongoing and that he was no longer alone. The villagers, sensing the change, approached with cautious optimism. They offered tools, seeds, and words of encouragement, recognizing the transformation that had begun. Lucas met their gazes with steady confidence, nodding in acknowledgement. Their collective effort had shifted the narrative from despair to renewal. The land was healing, and in turn, so was he. He turned again to the forest, watching as light and shadow played across the canopy. The white wolf's figure lingered at the edge of perception, a symbol of guardianship and mystery. Lucas understood that its role was far from over, that its silent vigil would continue, guiding him through future uncertainties. The bond between them had deepened, rooted in mutual respect and understanding. A soft breeze swept through the trees, carrying a faint, almost inaudible whisper, like a promise from the woods, a reassurance that protection and wisdom would persist. Lucas closed his eyes briefly, feeling the cool air against his face, allowing it to settle within him. This moment marked a turning point. His journey was no longer about conquest or deciphering secrets. It was about embracing resilience, trusting in the silent language of nature, and recognizing the profound connection that now united him with the forest and its guardian. When he opened his eyes again, a subtle movement caught his attention. The white wolf stepped into clearer view, its sleek form moving gracefully through the underbrush. It paused once more, then continued its silent patrol, leaving Lucas with a sense of calm certainty. The guardian was still watching, still present, perhaps forever, perhaps only for now. He exhaled slowly, a gentle smile forming. Whatever challenges awaited, he knew he wouldn't face them alone. The land, the forest, and the silent protector would remain by his side, guiding and watching. With that thought, a quiet confidence rooted itself deep within him, born of hope, gratitude, and the unbreakable strength of the natural world.